She was never the child who felt safe in her own home. Sally Field, the name that once meant warmth on television screens, is a woman built from the kind of heartbreak Hollywood doesn't like to show. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. Not the glossy parts, not the awards shelf. The parts that cut. The silences that became fuel. The survival that turned into art. Born November 6th, 1946, Sally's life began at the crossroads of glamour and absence. Her mother, Margaret Field, a working actress, shimmered in studio photos and vanished in the quieter rooms of her daughter's childhood. Her father, a war veteran, was stern and distant. Divorce when Sally was 4 set the tone. Love could fracture, and safety could be a rumor. Then came her stepfather, Jock Mahoney, charming, magnetic, and ultimately dangerous. In her memoir, In Pieces, Sally writes about boundaries crossed, trust destroyed, and a girl left to stitch herself back together with nothing more than grit and a tiny throat full of silence. The betrayal was not a headline. It was hidden at home, and that hiddenness became the driver of everything she would later do on stage and on screen. Acting wasn't a career choice. It was a lifeline. She learned to be someone else because being herself was too painful. The Flying Nun's wholesome virtue. These roles bought her safety, adoration, and checks. But they also boxed her into a label she hated. Lightweight, pretty, harmless. The public applauded the girl who could fly. Inside, she was dying to be heard. So she vanished. From 1968 to 1971, Sally walked away from sitcom comfort and stepped into the hard, brutal work of becoming an actor. Lee Strasberg's method didn't polish her, it peeled her open. She took the shell off and dared the world to see what was beneath. And it was brutal. She nearly quit. She thought she might be better off flipping burgers than selling an image that wasn't hers. But that silence, again, split two ways. Surrender or fight. She fought. The world didn't know how to handle the real Sally Field. When she exploded on screen in Sybil, 13 personalities stitched together out of trauma, people gasped. Not because she'd learned to act, because she'd learned to survive, and turned that survival into a performance that seared truth into television. Emmy, respect. Finally, people listened. But the industry that cheered her victories could still be petty and cruel. When she fought for real parts, Norma Rae, Places in the Heart, critics were surprised. Why? Because they'd long decided what a pretty face could be. She shattered that. Norma Rae's grit, the devout mother in Forrest Gump, the cracked grace in Places in the Heart. These were not roles she wore. They were wounds she gifted to audiences so we'd feel less alone ourselves. And love? Don't romanticize it. Sally's romantic life reads like a map of survival lessons. A young marriage at 22 to Stephen Craig brought 2 sons and what she hoped would be shelter. Instead, she felt invisible in her own family. A woman playing parts at home that mirrored the roles Hollywood forced on her. Divorce in 1975 didn't come as scandal so much as sorrow. The quiet grief of normal life that still left her feeling unseen. Then there was Burt Reynolds, the flashbulb romance the red carpet couple Hollywood drooled over. They fell fast, burned faster. For Sally, it stung in a way awards never would. Burt could be electric and tender one day, belittling and controlling the next. He reportedly told her she wasn't good enough for career-defining roles. When she won the Oscar, he refused to be by her side. Imagine holding the highest validation in your craft and watching the person you expected to share it with walk away. She stayed too long, trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. She left, not because she stopped loving him, but because she chose herself in the end. Her second long marriage to Alan Greisman brought a different rhythm. Not fireworks, not cruelty, a steadier harbor. A son, Sam, who years later would open her heart in ways she hadn't allowed before. When he came out as gay, Sally didn't recoil. She leaned in. She found fierce advocacy, not performative platitudes. She marched for LGBTQ rights. She used her voice to lift others. It wasn't celebrity theater. It was repair work turned outward. If you think surviving emotional betrayal and toxic relationships was the end of her trials, think again. Survival in Sally's life often arrived with a new kind of terror. The feeling of being one breath away from everything ending. October 29th, 1988. A private jet, an ordinary trip. A metallic roar gone wrong. The craft clipped another plane during takeoff. Metal screamed. Smoke filled the cabin. Seconds stretched like a lifetime. 4 people walked away, physically intact. But the invisible film of that moment never left her. The crash carved a quiet urgency into her every day. Surviving felt less like relief and more like a demand. Live honestly now, because you came back. And then there's the toll aging takes on women who refuse to vanish. Sally never chased youth with needles and illusions. She made peace with a face that carries its lines. She won awards, yes, 2 Oscars, but the trophies aren't the point. The point is a woman who held shame, anger, fear, and turned them into characters who felt like family to millions. She built a life beyond the cameras, a modest home in Pacific Palisades, a Lexus instead of a limousine, grandkids and soil under her nails. She traded red carpets for garden paths, late-night scripts for bedtime stories. She lives intentionally now. Yoga, plant-forward diet, morning practices that respect a body softened by time, yet strengthened by habit. Health-wise, the battle continued. Osteoporosis arrived like a thief, quiet but dangerous. Sally didn't hide that either. She launched campaigns, raised awareness, and told the world something crucial. Aging is not a joke. It's a reality that women must prepare for and talk about, loudly. And soul-wise, she refused to be silent. Her memoir in pieces didn't polish her pain into palatable celebrity drama. It named it, raw and bleeding. She spoke about abuse, about abortion in Tijuana at age 17, about being invisible in rooms that mattered most. She gave voice to the things we pretend don't exist. Here's the lesson this woman offers, blunt and beautiful. Scars are not shame, they are maps. They show where you've been and, if you allow them, where you can go. Sally took what terror gave her and made it art. She took what loneliness offered and made it compassion. She took what fear became and made it courage. So if you grew up with Sally as the comforting face in your living room, or if her roles taught you how to love better or grieve more honestly, pause. Don't just remember the smiles. Remember the journey. Remember that the woman behind the warmth earned every line on her face. If this story landed somewhere hard inside you, tell us below. Which part of Sally's life did you recognize in your own? And if you want more of these raw, no-nonsense stories, the kind that respect the audience's intelligence and hunger for truth, subscribe and stay. We'll keep telling the lives that matter, the ones sown from real pain and fierce.